Hi guys, it's me Quinn, and as always, if you appreciate my content, consider hitting the like button. It's the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me.
Galactic civilizations have long been a staple of science fiction. Humankind's transition from the egg that is the Earth into the realm of space just seems like a natural evolution. As civilization grows, more resources are required. Space has infinite resources, and the Earth itself is fragile. If something catastrophic ever happened, all of humankind would be put at risk. Spreading into the reaches of space would prevent this. A galactic civilization not only seems like a logical step, it's perhaps a necessary one. Still, as they are depicted in science fiction, galactic empires do indeed seem to possess a number of key problems. The first problem is communication. If humanity is spread throughout space on different planets, then conventional methods of communication would not be practical. Inhabitable planets could be light years away from one another. Without the ability to communicate efficiently, no form of galactic government could exist, and human cosmic society would be no more than a collection of planets operating mainly independent of each other. The solution to such a problem would of course be technological innovation, which is the approach of most science fiction. In the Dune saga, instantaneous communication is possible through use of the Holtzman effect. The Holtzman effect is a fictional scientific phenomenon discovered by Abraham von Holtzman, according to the Dune Encyclopedia. It allowed for instantaneous communication between distant worlds. Similarly, in Dan Simmons' Hyperion Cantos, communication between worlds is possible through use of fat line technology, but worlds had to be previously set up with fat line technology infrastructure beforehand. Worlds connected in this method also had the capability to allow for access to the All-Thing, essentially an advanced form of the internet. Fatline technology had been gifted to humanity by the Technocore, and only they had an intimate understanding of how exactly the technology worked. Cixin Liu's Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy solves the problem of communication with technology involving the phenomenon of quantum entanglement. This method, unlike the one appearing in Dune, Hyperion, and in most other science fiction series, is actually based upon real scientific principles. Quantum entanglement is also sometimes referred to as the quantum non-local connection, is a property of a quantum mechanical system in which two particles can be linked together in such a way that one cannot be described without full mention of its counterpart. This is true regardless of the particles' physical distance from each other in the universe. The next problem is commerce and travel. Similarly to the problem of communication, commerce and travel would be necessary for a galactic society to function. It's practical to assume that some worlds would possess resources that others did not. Some would be agriculturally oriented. Some would be worlds rich in natural resources and precious metals. If trade between worlds is not possible, then there really is no cosmic civilization at all, for trade is a fundamental aspect of all civilization. If humans cannot travel between worlds in a reasonable amount of time, it would be near impossible for any kind of interplanetary culture to develop. In the Dune universe, the time before the Guild, whose navigators could navigate the vacuum of space, was a dark age. After the fall of the machines, mankind could no longer move safely throughout space, as they could not avoid obstacles. This made space travel often deadly. The emergence of the Guild was so significant in the revitalization of the declining empire that their calendar was reset after its formation. The time before the Guild was given the epoch BG, before Guild, and AG, after Guild. Beyond this, without the ability to move freely throughout the universe, a civilization becomes vulnerable in other ways. Cixin Liu's Remembrance of Earth's trilogy depicts the human race's struggle to acquire faster than light travel. In the books, you see the helplessness of a civilization without the ability to move efficiently throughout the cosmos. In a universe potentially populated with billions of other civilizations, the danger extends greatly. Without the ability to escape enemies and natural disasters, the species is a sitting duck among piranhas. In some series such as Hyperion, there are certain issues associated with specific kinds of space travel. In normal space travel, relativity has to be considered. This all of course relates back to Einstein's famous equation, E=mc². Time moves slower for those traveling through the vacuum of space at near light speed than for those stationary on planets. A traveler may find that after returning from a voyage off-world that their loved ones have died or aged beyond recognition. Even if you could solve these problems and actually manage to get a galactic society functioning, then comes the question of leadership, regulation, and bureaucracy. And all of these have various issues that can be associated with them, just stretched out to a galactic scale. On Earth, human civilizations often gravitated to a model of centralized leadership, organized in pyramid fashion with the most valuable and most powerful at the top. A major problem, however, arises when this style of governance is applied to galactic society. The more a cosmic civilization grows, the harder it becomes for a centralized government to handle its bureaucratic and regulatory demands. In Asimov's Foundation series, this is the key cause for the fall of the Empire. In the series, the capital world Trantor had long been the center of imperial administration. The demands of such a large empire proved to be too much for a centralized style of leadership. The collapse of the entire system began with Trantor, and when it fell, the empire fell. In a galactic empire led this way, some worlds and people would inevitably be neglected. And because certain worlds would be given more attention than others, this would lead to problems of inequality throughout the inhabited universe. This would ultimately weaken the unity of any galactic empire, as humankind's baseline sense of inherent equality would be destroyed. Because of this, resentment towards the centralized ruling class would no doubt increase. This would lead to rebellions inevitably ensuing. These rebellions would also threaten the stability of the empire. On a galactic scale, these problems compound upon each other until they are unmanageable. Leaders incapable of managing the problems arising from a growing empire then often turn to cruel methods to suppress rebels and to quell any potential unrest in the future. In turn, more often than not, this simply makes things worse, increasing the resentment towards the ruling class, and it becomes a vicious cycle that erodes the integrity of the empire as a whole. Frank Herbert's Dune Saga also makes an argument directly in opposition to the idea of centralized leadership on a galactic scale. The main idea being, if one person could rule over all of humanity, then one threat could annihilate it. This highlights the inherent threat of centralized leadership on the cosmic stage. The magnifying effect that power and influence has on the actions of certain individuals is amplified. Instead of an individual's actions potentially affecting an entire country, the whole of humanity is affected. This was the effect with Trantor in Asimov's series, and the same principle is also demonstrated in Cixinlu's series with the concept of the wall facers and later the sword holders. Of course, there are always workarounds to these problems, and many science fiction series have shown examples. Still, often much of the conflict and driving narratives of many science fiction series are tied to the inherent problems which arise when humanity attempts to exist on a galactic scale. And add that to the fact that sci-fi empires are often governed in an archaic manner. Why does there need to be an emperor? We outgrew emperors on Earth, I hope. Why would we have them in the future? That's going backwards. A functioning galactic society likely wouldn't resemble any society on Earth because a new system of governance would have to form in order to accommodate the current state of human society. This video was of course brought to you by my wonderful patrons. If you would like to support this channel, please click the Patreon link in the description.